Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know that Persona 4 is receiving a remake akin to Persona 3 Reload that we received not too long ago, and this time we're going to be reimagining the world of Inaba and tackling down all of the messages and themes and the characters and everything like that that Persona 4 has to offer. And I don't think I'm overstating things when I say that this is probably the biggest news of my entire life. I love Persona 4, and I wanted to go ahead and talk about a lot of things that are being discussed right now with Persona 4. There's a lot of topics about Persona 4 that always get brought up. And then with the whole drama surrounding the leaks around this game and a lot of other things, there's just some things that I wanted to get off of my chest regarding this video game. And let's go ahead and do that. And then towards the end of this video, I'm going to be talking about why I am extremely happy personally to have a Persona 4 remake and why I think you should be excited for it as well. So first and foremost, let's get probably the elephant out of the room. I saw a lot of people on social media and a lot of people in, Twitch chats and everything like that talking about how the game looks rough or how it doesn't look great. A lot of these claims, while technically true, I think if you just think about it for half a second, it makes a lot of sense as to how the game looks. First of all, right in the beginning of the trailer, towards the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, it does say that this is early footage. All of this stuff is subject to change. Now, interestingly, in Persona 3 Reload, there was no such disclaimer, because as we know, Persona 3 Reload got revealed and then pretty much came out very shortly afterwards. Whereas with Persona 4 Golden, or Persona 4 Revival, I should say, I don't think this game is coming out until 2027 at the absolute earliest. So now that probably begs the question, well, if it's not coming out for such a long time, why even show it, man? This thing might not even exist. They should have just waited to show us this game. And I think because of all the leaks and rumors surrounding this game, I think Atlas just wanted to get ahead of things and say, hey, bro, we're working on it. Get the fuck off our backs. It's happening. Persona 4, it exists. Please, for the love of God, leave us alone and let us cook. We all know Persona fans are a little insane, myself included, so it was only a matter of time before we got a confirmation on this game. And then later on Twitter, they also confirmed that they're working on the future of the Persona installment, so we know that Persona 6 is also in the kitchen and is also being cooked up. I'm imagining they're working on Persona 4 right now as sort of a buffer to give us something while we wait for the eventual Persona 6 and all the stuff that could bring. I'm obviously very excited about that. So not only have all the leaks and rumors really spoiled this, but if you guys are tapped into the Persona 4 revival drama, you know that a lot of the old voice cast of Persona 4 Golden has come out on record and stated that they have not been asked to reprise their roles from the original Persona game. Now, this kind of came out of nowhere because while we kind of had an inkling and we kind of knew that something Persona 4 remake related was very likely to happen, it wasn't until the voice actors started saying, hey, I'm not reprising my role, that people were like, maybe there's a little bit more smoke to this fire. This kind of soft confirms the game. Now, the voice actors do have some leeway because they technically never said that the game was actually being developed. All they really said was, hey, I have not been asked to reprise my role. But if you have two brain cells to rub together, you can read between the lines and know that this is pretty much them soft confirming the game and then also saying that they will not be reprising their roles. As far as what the voice actors decided to do, I find myself in a tough pickle here because I love to support the artists. I love to support all these voiceover artists. I love to support all the working actors. And it leaves me in a tough position because I really cannot wrap my head around them sort of ruining this announcement for the Persona fans. And furthermore, you know that the Persona fandom is usually pretty toxic towards the new voice cast. I mean, we saw that with Persona 3 Reload. They were very toxic towards the Persona 3 Reload first cast, or the new cast, until, we heard them and we played the game and, everybody realized, damn, we were tripping over nothing. But they can be very hostile and toxic towards the new voiceover artists, and you pretty much put a giant target on their back. And that's just something that I can't agree with. Even if you have disputes with Atlas or the Persona team or whatever the case may be, I don't know why you would sort of set up the new cast that is going to be taking over your roles to be punched on pretty much. And we know that when Persona does these remakes with like Persona 3 Reload or even Persona 4 Golden from back in the day, that sometimes people may get their role replaced. I think this is kind of commonplace, and I think we saw that, obviously with Persona 3 Reload. Now, that doesn't mean that behind the scenes there wasn't some shady stuff going on. Obviously, we don't know. Nobody has talked about it or confirmed it, but it is really odd that they all came out and said that explicitly. But I do think that the pressure from, the voice actors coming out and saying this and pretty much confirming the game, the surprise was already ruined. So I think letting us know, hey, we're working on this, it's in development, we're cooking up, I think it makes some sense. And I think that also explains why the trailer looks rather unfinished. And another point to add to my argument here is if you look at side by side the Persona 3 Reload trailer versus the Persona 4 Revival trailer, I think it's very obvious that when the Persona 3 Reload trailer was shown, that game was much closer to completion than Persona 4 Revival is. So I do not believe at all that this Persona 4 Revival footage we've seen is indicative of what the game is going to look like in the slightest. I mean, there's no NPCs in the streets, there's no combat sequences, we don't even hear a voice, we don't even hear a damn music remix. And for a Persona game, that is unheard of. Between all that, that just very clearly illustrates to me that Atlas will probably be very quiet about this project until they have something more substantial to show. And I do believe that may happen as early as next year, but I would not expect to see this game until 2027 at the earliest. Now, if they find some way to bring the game beforehand, obviously I will be extremely excited, but I'm not holding my breath for that. But that goes on to the next topic here. We know that with Persona 3 Reload, they changed a lot about that game. One of the biggest complaints for Persona 3 Reload was that people felt like the cast didn't feel super connected and they didn't have that sense of camaraderie. So they added these sort of link events that weren't necessarily social links with the main cast, but they provided a lot of context, backstory, and characterization for the characters, and honestly, was preferable to social links in my opinion, because a lot of them are tied and gated to main story events, so there's a lot of things that happen in the story that affect the characters in their respective social links. And the reason why that's so important is because social links outside of the social events that happened in Persona 3 Reload have to sort of be vague enough to be like, whether you're doing this social link right in the beginning of the game or right at the end of the game, it still makes sense. And I think that kind of makes the writers write themselves into a little bit of a corner. So I think alleviating that and just bypassing that issue altogether helped a lot to realize the Persona 3 Reload cast, and I think it did a great job of that. And then, of course, they changed the way that the Tartarus works, which is another huge complaint about that game. They removed the tired mechanic, and they just added a whole bunch of quality of life features to Persona 3 Reload that I'm sure they're also going to do for Persona 4 Revival. But what exactly could they change directly that I think would be a massive improvement? And there's two major things, one of which I think most people will agree with, and the second one I think might get me some hate from the Persona 4 fandom, but I'm gonna say it anyways. The first one are the dungeons. Now, I don't know if this is necessarily a hot take, but for me personally, I actually feel like the dungeons in Persona 4 are the weakest sort of dungeon crawling aspect in the Persona franchise. Obviously, the palaces in Persona 5 remain undefeated, they're actual levels, and even though some of them are better than others, and I don't love all of the dungeon or palace designs in Persona 5, that is much more preferable to the Tartarus and then the dungeons in Persona 4. I think everybody can agree to that. But where Persona 4 really lacks is these dungeons will have these sort of themes that go about through each dungeon, but they kind of fall flat in my opinion and don't do really anything interesting. I'm happy that they existed because that pretty much paved the way for what the palaces would become in Persona 5, but instead what we get with Persona 4 is something that is honestly very much like the Tartarus, except they have like different coat of paints, and every once in a while you might hear Yukiko saying, "Oh my god, that's not me type shit, or whatever the case may be. But the floors in the Persona 4 dungeons are so long and drawn out. I feel like the Tartarus kind of has this more perceived effect of progression, whereas Persona 4 feels way more like a slog. Even though I'm sure if you were to time them out, you probably spend a lot less time in the Persona 4 dungeons than you do in the Tartarus in Persona 3, but it doesn't really feel that way in my opinion. So I'm sure Atlas is cooking up something devious, because you know, they made the Tartarus, in my opinion, a lot better with the monad doors and a lot of the other quality of life features to increase the dungeons and the grinding in that game. And I'm sure they'll do the same in this remake. Now, I don't think we can expect something on the level of a Persona 5 dungeon. That might be a little insane, but I think we can expect a great improvement in terms of those dungeons. I'm not really concerned about that, but that I think is the biggest thing for me, because Persona 4 is very social sim heavy, probably the most social sim heavy out of all of the Persona games, and I feel like the combat and the dungeon crawling kind of takes a backseat to the characters and the story and the slice of life moments, but that doesn't mean we still don't want our Persona dungeon crawling to be elite. So what is the other aspect of Persona 4 that I would like to see changed? Now, this one I do think is going to be extremely divisive amongst Persona fans, but it is the character of Yoske. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of rumors and speculation about whether or not Yoske was actually meant to be a gay character who was struggling and internalizing those homophobic feelings, and all the other stuff that goes on with that character was very intricate. But regardless of whether or not any of that stuff is true, fact of the matter is that is not the Yoske we got when it came to the full release of the game. And what that sort of leaves is a character that I feel like is just mean-spirited and honestly extremely bigoted. Now, I understand that at the time, times are very different. Japanese culture is extremely different to Western culture. I understand all of that, but even even if you don't agree with like Yoske himself being, you know, gay or whatever the case may be, I just feel like it ends up making his character feel incomplete and almost like an insult of a character, because here you have Yoske, who throughout the entirety of the game is shown to be a little bit misogynist, is shown to sexualize and objectifying women, and then of course the pretty much rampant homophobia that permeates all throughout the game. With the character Kanji, for example. And I think Kanji is a character that gets really misunderstood by Persona fans. I think a lot of people tend to think that Kanji's whole entire character arc comes to be with homoerotic feelings and him feeling like he might be gay, maybe not, when in actuality, what Kanji's character actually is tackling is masculinity and what it really means to be a man. And that just because you might like some more classically effeminate activities doesn't make you any less of a man. You can still be a great man even if you like to knit or sew or bake or whatever the case may be. But Yoske sort of takes that and is like, oh my God, like, yo, don't be gay around me, bro. Like, I don't want you to be gay. And I think that dichotomy between those two characters is actually like really good. And I think it is a story that actually should be told. But Yoske sort of never learns or transforms from a lot of his dated and bigoted views, and I think that just makes him a worse character. You have somebody who offhandedly jokes about Kanji being gay, who offhandedly makes misogynistic and sexually objectifying comments towards his friends, and towards the end of the game, he never owns up to it, man. He never apologizes. He never sees Kanji for more than, you know, or I don't want to say he never sees Kanji for more than what he is, because obviously they all do, they're all friends and stuff like that, but I feel like it doesn't get portrayed well enough. And I'm not saying that in Persona 4 Revival that Yoske needs to be gay or have a big coming out moment. I want him to have a self-realization moment. I want him to confront his bigotry. I want him to confront that side of him, because honestly speaking, I think a lot of people, whether knowingly or not, can be bigoted or misogynistic or homophobic or whatever the case may be without really realizing it. And it isn't until he befriends people like Yukiko and Chie that he might see the error in his ways and how he objectified women and how that might even have negatively impacted his relationship with other women that he's had, like in the very beginning of the game, right? And, you know, when he befriends somebody like Kanji or somebody like Naoto, and that makes him, you know, recontextualize gender norms and gender roles, which is why I think Kanji and Naoto are such great characters, because they confront, you know, what might be considered to be hypermasculinity, or what it means to be a man, or what it means to be a woman, and they confront that head on and buckle those norms, you know. And I think having, you know, Yoske be a front seat to that, I think it should profoundly impact him. And it just doesn't in the current Persona 4 game. And I think that's a little bit disappointing. I think Persona 4 is a game that really realizes deep and intricate characters like Nanako, like Dojima, like Kanji, like Naoto, you know, even to a smaller degree like Yukiko and Chie, right? I think like we really get a great understanding of these characters, and then I feel like Yoske really gets the short end of the stick. And I talk a lot of trash about Yoske offhandedly. I make a lot of jokes about Yoske, but I think he has the potential to be the best character in Persona 4, but I just feel like whether they were too scared to confront those societal norms at the time, or whatever the case may be, maybe it was just an oversight, maybe they just didn't think about it. I think there was a lot of potential to be achieved with Yoske, and I think that if they were to correct some of these things, I would be a much bigger fan. But like I said, I know Yoske has a lot of fans out there, and I probably pissed some of you guys off. I hope not too bad, but that is just something that I would like to see changed in Persona 4 Revival. But to wrap this up, I wanted to end this off on a very positive note, and that is with talking about why I'm excited to play Persona 4. And now this is going to get very emotional for me, and it's going to unlock some OmegaPro lore. It is the year of 2012, and I had recently just dropped out of high school. And I was feeling very alone and lost, you know, and I used to watch a lot of YouTube back in the day, and I'll never forget this, rest in peace to the GOAT, but I was watching a Total Biscuit video, and he used to do this series where he would answer fan mail from fans, right? And somebody asked him, hey, Total Biscuit, I know you go on planes and stuff a lot, and you travel with your PS Vita a lot. What are some games you could recommend for somebody to get into? And as somebody who had just gotten a PlayStation Vita, I was very interested in this question, what his answer would be, because he was somebody whose opinion I respected greatly. And then he said that he's been playing this little RPG called Persona 4 Golden, and how it's been changing his life, and all this glowing reviews about this game called Persona 4 Golden. So that day I went to a GameStop, I found it used at GameStop, and I traded in a few games. I came home and I bought Persona 4 Golden, not really knowing what it was and not really knowing what to expect. I played that game religiously for weeks, and I was in a very low point in my life, a very tumultuous point in my life. A lot of my friends were graduating high school, moving on to college, getting jobs and doing all this stuff, and here I was, a high school dropout, trying to pursue YouTube and streaming with not a dollar to show for it, and feeling like a complete fucking failure. But here I was, playing this RPG on my PlayStation Vita all day, every single day. And as weird and lame and embarrassing as it may sound, those people in that game kind of were my high school experience, because I moved around a lot as a kid. I think between the 9th grade alone, I went to 4 different high schools. I was tired of being the new kid. I was tired of trying to make friends. So I just stopped. I gave up, and I pretty much didn't have very many friends at all. So these kind of were my friends. And in replacement of like what should be a normal kid's high school experience, I kind of lived that through Persona 4. And Persona 4 is a game that is a lot about friendship and their bond together and their camaraderie. And so I grew really attached to that friend group and to all of those characters. You know, it felt like I was going to school with a bunch of friends every single day when I played that game. You know, after weeks of playing it, I finally beat the game, and I remember beating that game, and I don't think to this day I have cried as profusely in a game in my entire life. And it's not like the game has like a super sad ending. There's emotional moments, sure, But I think it was just a realization of like, Jesus Christ, this feels like, you know, graduating and like saying goodbye to your friends. Everybody's going off to live their lives, and you know, you don't know when you'll see each other again, but you wish the best for each other. And you know that after everything, you guys still made lifelong friendships, lifelong relationships. And it was something that profoundly impacted me at that time. And I owe a lot to Persona 4, because I feel like if I hadn't played that game when I did, I may have never been able to come to grips with the fact that I dropped out. I may have never been able to really internalize or understand a lot of those complex emotions and feelings that I was going through when I was, you know, a teenager, freshly dropped out of high school. It mattered to me a lot. It impacted me a lot. It was my very first Persona game. And even though I make jokes about, you know, the franchise, and I make jokes about Persona 4, it is still a game that every time I go back to today just fills me with nostalgia and a rush of emotions that I haven't felt since I was a young boy, you know, just lost in this world. And the world of Inaba is just one that feels so nostalgic to me and so warm and so inviting. And so being able to revisit that place in the beautiful art style that I know Atlus will do, in the beautiful art direction and graphical fidelity that I know Atlus is capable of, it is going to sort of be a full circle moment for me. And I'm probably gonna be very overcome with emotions when it comes to that game. So Atlus, I know you've seen a couple of my videos before. I doubt you'll ever see this one, but if you do, I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, just thank you. You guys have crafted experiences that have impacted players all across the world more than you can possibly ever know. And Persona 4 is a very big pioneer in games that have impacted my life and games that I think have impacted a lot of people. Whether somebody's first Persona game was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think everybody will always remember their first Persona game. And I think everybody will always have that impact on them that can never be erased. And when Persona 4 Revival comes out, you can bet I will be one of the first people there cheering that game on and playing through it all live on my Twitch channel, baby, link in the description. And you guys will probably see me cry playing that game just like you saw me cry playing Persona 3 Reload. But anyways, that is it for this video. I just had a lot to yap about with Persona 4. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope you got something out of this video, and I look forward to reading your comments down below.